Welcome to another episode of Exit Philosophy. He's Mal Romanin. I'm Rich Griffin. And it's finally arrived. Opening day arrived on Thursday. And we can discuss, but for some reason, I wasn't quite as excited about this opening day, even before it happened, but especially with the way it played out. We can discuss that. But the first thing I want to discuss is the elephant in the room, which was the hat that said Canada is not for sale, which the mayor or the premier of
Premier.
Ontario wears at his press conferences. And someone thought in their wisdom, security, that this hat deserved to be ejected from the ballpark. And when you're struggling, as the Blue Jays are, to capture the heart and soul of their fan base, what do you think of that move?
What do I think of it? I mean, it's indicative of, I think, this regime, unfortunately. Like you lack feel. You are very sensitive to what's being said about you, and that's always been the case. I mean, Griff, when you go looking for trouble, you find it. There's always trouble to find if you want it. Unfortunately, it starts with you usually. I'm not even sure would they have thrown the premier out if he wore the hat?
Yeah, it's a good question. But his brother, they would have thrown out for drinking too heavily.
Well, not if he was buying all those $20 beers. They would have.
That's true. Yeah.
That's right. But yeah, come on. Like let's again, it's just I've seen this before in other organizations where you get very sensitive to the pressure, to what's being said about you. I've seen it with other regimes. And then you start listening and acting on things that you shouldn't. You end up calling reporters, telling them you don't like what they're saying, thinking that's how you handle PR, when in effect, how you handle PR is just to do good work and build relationships. And this is just indicative of the regime and how they operate. It's really unfortunate. Should
Yeah.
never be handled like that.
With regard to the hat, it was a red hat in sort of a MAGA color. And that's the point of how it was
I thought it was sort of a Canada
invented.
color. I
Yeah.
thought it was a
Well,
Canada color.
yeah. Well,
But I know
I
what your
think that
point is.
it attracts the attention because it's the same hat that you see.
Yes,
And I understand a certain version of that rule when it involves offensive language,
of
something that
course.
kids might be
Of course.
offended by. But in this case, they clearly they're going to revise their
Clearly.
policy in terms of this. But I like some of the explanations that you had about what's offensive and what's not.
I did. But I mean, like you said, if somebody wears a MAGA hat, is that offensive? No. To me, yeah. Yeah, I think it represents a certain thing that I'm not a fan of, but can you directly quote, like, can you throw somebody out of the building for it? I wouldn't do that. And like I said to you before, let him wear it. Let him fend for himself in that crowd and see how it goes. Now, if anybody misbehaves due to that, you take action. But if somebody wants to wear a MAGA hat, you can't throw somebody out of the building for that. I wouldn't want to be that guy. But,
Yeah,
good luck.
I think they should worry more about making the Blue Jays great again.
Which is my point. When you're worried about everything else, the reason you're worried about it is usually because you have reason to worry because you haven't done the things you needed to do within the organization, where you're not free to let people behave a certain way because you're always trying to control the message, control, control, control. You can't control people. You've got to do things where you're not worried about the message because people will speak well of you. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
The and getting back to baseball now, people complain about Rogers Center and the roof, and baseball should be an outdoor sport. But for this first homestand, 7 games, four against the Orioles, three against the Nationals, it's supposed to rain every
Ooh,
day the rest of
lousy
the
weekend.
like thank God for a dome. Thank God for a roof. They should maybe remove it a little earlier and not worry about people who complain it's too cold and I didn't bring a sweater.
Yeah.
That's in May and late April and early May. But right now on this homestand, they have the opportunity to open at home which they haven't done in a while since 2022 when Jose Berrios also was bombed. But they they
Pattern.
should take advantage of it. Um, and thank God for the dome. But in terms of the feeling of opening day, I don't know about you. You were watching. I was there in my seat in the press box. But it just there was something missing as far as I was concerned. And you know my feeling about opening days
Oh,
past
it's the
and about the
greatest.
arrival of baseball.
The best
But
day.
there was something missing. There wasn't the fan reaction, There wasn't during the introductions, there it was polite applause for most people. I think Max Scherzer Kevin Kiermaier got a nice reception when he threw out the first pitch. But there was something definitely missing. Could you feel it?
Oh, 100%. And obviously the game didn't help matters. Um, but I think you're seeing how the fans are feeling. There isn't a lot of optimism and hope and things to look forward to. I think you're seeing even some apathy set in with the where the state of the organization's at. And I think that's got to be a concern. I mean, it's just kind of there this year. I mean, it's certainly not high in my all-time opening days. I don't know about yours, but
Yeah,
did it make your
definitely.
list? Did
No, it
not.
did not make my list. Yeah, I had a list on griffsthepitch.com of my top 10 opening days from among the 53 that I've been at, and that did
The,
not make my
the top
list.
10 is safe.
The
What's your
top
top?
10 is safe.
What's your top ones?
Well, I had three specifically. One of them was 1973, which was my first opening day, and it was Wrigley Field, 3-2 Cubs win, but the matchup was great. Fergie Jenkins was starting for the Cubs and Mike Torres for the Expos. And like, who would have thought that 53 years later, um, Fergie Jenkins and I would be communicating on Facebook? Like, I was just an 18-year-old kid thinking, wow, this is
Oh,
spectacular.
no
And-
kidding, eh?
yeah. And then Mike Marshall walked two guys with the bases loaded. The second walk that he gave up with the bases loaded in the 10th inning was to Rick Monday, who would come back much later to haunt the
Little did
franchise.
you know at that
But he,
time. Yes.
and the pinch runner for Ron Santo, who scored the winning run, was Tony La Russa. So there you go.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And then
That's pretty
another
cool.
another one that I loved was 1977, and it was so hectic. It was like chaos because at spring training in Daytona Beach, news came in that the Olympic Stadium would be ready for opening day, which it wasn't.
Yeah.
But but
It's
that's
still
where
not ready for opening day, Griff.
that's correct. But that's where the team would be playing. The Olympics had finished. The Olympics had to be outdoors. That's the rule. Like all the track and field events had. So they didn't have the roof ready to go. So it only took them another 12 years to get the roof ready to go.
So
But
you're telling me that within less than 30 days you found out where you were playing.
yeah,
Like,
it was and during spring training. So it was in March that the announcement was made. There was a workout day parade in open cars in convertibles from Jerry Park to Olympic Stadium. They worked out, opened the next day, and Jerry Park was only 29,000 capacity.
great.
In Olympic Stadium, that first day they drew 57,000.
Well,
So
wow.
that's a sales job, That's a
That
sales
that
job.
I need to hire that guy for my ball team. I
And
need a
then
parade of some sorts here.
the third opening day that struck me, and this one was different in a way, is 79, and the Expos hadn't become great yet. 79 was the year,
Yeah.
but on March 28th, the opener was scheduled in Pittsburgh on April the 5th at Three Rivers. On March 28th, 3 Mile Island went down, which is the nuclear
Yeah.
disaster, and it's within spitting distance of Pittsburgh.
I
So
guess it would be, wouldn't it?
mid-March, they released the movie The China Syndrome with Jane Fonda, Jack Lemmon, and Michael Douglas. And that was about a nuclear disaster.
Right,
So
right,
it all came together, and now we're landing in Pittsburgh just in the wake of what could be a nuclear disaster fallout.
right.
And Bill Lee was behind me, spaceman, coming down the ramp of the plane. He comes out, takes a deep breath out of the plane, and then reaches in his bag and puts on an army surplus gas mask with the big hose in front, and he wore it all the way to the team hotel.
All the way, even on the
On the
bus.
bus, he's wearing it. He's breathing heavily, and I went, "Oh, that's space. This is the guy." And then
This is my guy right here.
they canceled the April 5th game, and they said it was weather, but it was sunny. It was the sunniest day in Pennsylvania history, and I think they were just checking on radioactive levels at Three Rivers Stadium. But then they played the next day. Um, the Expos won that game. Just the circumstances leading up to opening day were what struck me, and that's why they
I
made
wonder if
the
there's
top five
like
list.
even a camera shot of that or something. You guys getting off the plane and
No,
one of the
there weren't cell phones, and
no.
I
I
was in
mean,
front of him, and I was taken aback, and I didn't whip out a camera, which I still not the best photographer, even with the cell phone.
oh man, that's tremendous. Those are the best parts of baseball, those stories.
But the as now it brings us back to reality of
Yeah,
Thursday, and like I made this point before we went on air, but you're 3 days removed from spring training. They had 3 off days in Toronto, flew back on Sunday, and in the second inning of your first game, you make three mental mistakes on one play. And
I
and
know.
I understand it happening in July or August. You go, well, we haven't had PFP since spring training. You forget these things. But on that play, if I can briefly describe it, it was a runners on second and third. The Jays were down 1-0 in the second.
One out.
A high chopper to Vlad at first base. And all of a sudden, Mountcastle heads to third. He's almost at third. Tyler O'Neill heads back to third. He's almost at third. And Vlad has the ball in his hands. Berrios didn't leave the mound. I guess he was expecting a play at third or Vlad to make the
Well,
play himself.
you shouldn't.
Cedric Mullins is a speed runner, so he's going down the line. And Vlad panics seemingly and flips the ball to Berrios, who's not even close to covering in time, but his momentum carries him past first base and allows Tyler O'Neill to turn and score where one of those guys should have been out at third base.
Right?
And like it just, it didn't determine the game because it was a 12-2 game, but it set the tone for this game and hopefully not for the season. But it's a bad way to start. It's a bad look. Fans are need to be won back over. And when you saw that, what did you think?
Well, I think it's kind of been unfortunately indicative of the last few years of this team. I mean, it's sometimes you throw cliches out and you talk about fundamentals and playing good fundamental baseball. And I just see that they don't often do that. You know what I mean? They've got good defenders, but that's just fundamental. Like that ball gets hit to that side of the field. Barrios doesn't decide anything. You just bust your nut to get over there. You know what I mean? You leave the mound immediately. Obviously, Vladdy he panicked. He panicked. Like there was no play at first, and it, like you said, there was a guy dead to rights on third base. So I you can't in the second inning. I guess it happens, but I like nobody's perfect, but it's just not what you want to see. It's not good fundamental baseball. And for this team that is, going to hover around 500, I would think, or, in that neighborhood, you need to make sure you're not giving away runs or making mistakes that can tip the scales in the wrong direction. You know, you need to gain a game or two the other way with good
Yeah.
fundamental baseball.
And with Barrios, it was his second home opener that he's pitched in a Blue Jays uniform. The other one was in 2022, where he lasted a third of an inning against the Texas Rangers
Yeah.
and gave up 4 runs and too many hits and a couple of walks and a home run. So,
It's
I
not
mean,
good when this was the good opener.
yeah, right. Yeah, he was pitch efficient for a while because they
Yeah,
were tonging him
he gave you
early in
some
the count.
innings. He gave you some innings.
But then after the game, John Schneider was talking about opening day and maybe Berrios was amped, trying too hard, whatever. But I mean, we talked about the option
Veteran.
they had of maybe having Gausman pitch in that game, and we're not second guessing because we talked about this three
Oh
weeks.
no, we said it should have been Gausman.
Yeah, yeah,
I would have given the
um,
ball to Scherzer before Berrios. Like out
yeah.
of respect. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, somebody mentioned that, but I didn't think that that would have been, because of his thumb issue and
well,
you
maybe.
understanding whatever. But definitely Gosman, and then have Berrios go on the Friday.
Gausman is your ace. There's
Yeah,
just no two ways about it. Anybody who says otherwise is delusional. So
but
why you didn't get the ball, I don't know.
it's the same thing. They made a decision in 23 to go with Alek Manoah on opening day instead of
Yeah.
Gosman. And that seemed to be also a bad decision because Manoah's a kid. He had one good year. He already was full of himself at that point, and he's settled down. He's become a much more ready for primetime pitcher. And I think when he comes back, he'll be completely different
Yeah,
personality.
I do too. Yeah.
The work ethic is there. But again, so Gosman twice has been passed over, and twice it's ended up in not very good results.
Yeah, I just don't understand that decision. But and again, we talked about that to great extent. So it's not like we're using hindsight here. It didn't go well, unfortunately. And
And the
maybe
thing,
they
and
can right the ship today.
yeah, another thing about the game, the opening day game, is the absence of Ryan Yarbrough. That was a surprise. It seemed to me to a lot of people. The thought was that Ryan Yarbrough would exercise his opt out on at the end of spring training, would be added to the 26-man roster on the
Yeah.
Sunday when the decision had to be made, and then you wouldn't have needed Jacob Barnes. You wouldn't have needed Richard Lovelady in the middle of the game after Barrios. You could have had Yarbrough in there with a reliable change of speed, change of look. But he's gone to the Yankees now. Do you think that that will have a long-term effect this season when your bottom of your bullpen now has two guys that are iffy in terms of should they be there?
Well, it starts to look like last year's bullpen, and you don't want to overreact to an opening day game for sure. But I think that game kind of put on display, the worst of what can happen for the Jays. It was kind of, when things go sideways, it doesn't look very, very appealing. Obviously, it's not going to look like that every day. But Yarborough, obviously, he's a veteran. He can give you those innings. It's also sad that you say that about Ryan Yarborough because he's not over a great pitcher himself, but it's the effect he has on everybody else, right? It's the domino effect of forcing the Jacob Barnes into to positions that, I mean, you shouldn't be there in the first place. So never mind. You just get exposed because Yarborough's not there and he can eat those innings. On another note, a friend of the podcast, so to speak, Yariel Rodriguez, woof. I mean, you would hoped he could be a real key. It's one game, but man, that was a bad look. Like he looked like your 5-5 guy. You know what I mean? And not a key weapon out of the bullpen. That
Yeah,
was alarming to me, actually.
he uh, he had spring training was there, and people assumed that he would be a swingman, or if something happened to one of the starters,
Yep.
that he would become that guy, the fifth guy in the rotation. So there was never a lot of discussion or question surrounding Yariel Rodriguez. So his performance went under the radar, but it shouldn't have because it wasn't that good at spring training. And,
Right.
you know, like people go, well, he's a veteran guy. but he's only had really one season of secondary usage. He was a starting pitcher, a sixth starter, and assumed the role of fifth. But he wasn't that good last year either. And just the belief was that he throws 96, sometimes 97, 98 maybe. But he averages 93, 94. But he needs to command. And the one fastball home run he gave up, the second of his back-to-back bombs that he allowed, was like
Yeah.
96 right in the wheelhouse,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's because the calling card for the IRL is the stuff, right? But I mean, command's everything. Fastball command is everything. Just ask Pat Hankin. He'll tell
Yeah.
you that. I remember talking long, hard about best pitches in baseball, fastball command, and there was none of that. And
Yeah.
it was just, yeah, you're just like he can't be in here right now. That's hopefully there's better days ahead, but you need more out of that guy. He's an important piece.
How about the opening day lineup? And we had understood that they were going to start the year with Springer not batting leadoff, and Bo was going to be in the leadoff, and they wanted their big three at the top so that they would all hit in the first inning. But if you believe in your lineup, then even the fourth place hitters should hit in the first inning. I mean, if you're going, we want to
Oh,
make sure they hit in the first inning,
right.
but they go one, two, three, which they did. And then the Bo, Vlad, and Santander combined 0 for 10 with two walks. But the cleanup hitter is the one that, to me, was a head scratcher in terms of Andres Jimenez coming over and known for his glove. There's no question that he's a
Oh,
gold glover.
yeah.
There's no question that the belief is there that he can bounce back. He had a very good offensive year in 2022, slumped in 23, 24, and then for a team that's trying to sell to its fans that we are going to contend this year, what did you think of him batting cleanup in that spot?
I was stunned. I think it's a terrible look. He's not a four-hole hitter. I know it's, if you just talk, I know this sounds ridiculous, but I'd rather seen him hitting a two-hole where maybe his skill set, if you want him up that high, could be more, valuable as opposed to, a guy. Now you're talking about your four-hole hitter hitting the ball the other way and being a smart hitter. He's supposed to hit 40. That's what the four-hole hitter. I mean, what are you telling? Like I saw that lineup, I'm like, oh boy, yeah, their lineup's really bad. Oh, I remember now. Like stick Wagner in there. I like, or just put Jimenez in the two hole, bump those guys down. I
Yeah, I
I don't
think
know,
I
man.
think bumping him down and putting him in the two hole is a pretty good idea because then you go right, left, right, switch.
Right.
It was Santander batting fourth. And it's a like I said, it's not that strong an argument to say we want to guarantee that they'll all hit in the first inning. You should believe that if you have four guys, that they're all going to hit in the first inning. If you really believe in your lineup.
Well, because if they don't, they're getting out. Even your top three guys. You want them to hit. Good. They just I mean, they're all getting out. I
Which
mean,
bring which brings us to the catcher now, because again another mental mistake that we glossed over before, but in the he was wearing out a path. Alejandro Kirk was wearing out a path to third base. First three ground balls, hard hit ground balls to third base. Bat to ball skills are there clearly.
yep.
Rounded into a double play. And then in the ninth, he lashes a line drive, hard line drive off the right field wall, down 12 to 2, and gets thrown out at second base trying to stretch it into a double, down by 10 runs. I mean, that's a mental mistake.
I
And I
guess
don't even want to talk about it because we all acknowledge that he shouldn't have done that. But that brings us to the contract discussion of what did you think of 5 years? So he's signed for 25, then 5 more years, 2030, 58 million for the extension. He was making 4.6, so that's 62.6 over in the next 6 years. What did you think of that contract?
I if you believe in the player, I think it's a very reasonable, fair contract if he's your starting catcher. Now, the question is, can he carry the load? Like he's never done it. Never. So, and it's not like, oh, he's had a couple of unfortunate injuries. It's concerned that he can't handle the load, body type. It's legitimate stuff that w makes you worry that he can catch 120 games. Um, so um, I'm okay with it. I mean, but there's risk involved because you need a number two guy, and they don't have a number two guy. They've got a triple A guy as their backup,
Yeah.
and I'll never understand how they didn't address that because there are guys you can go get. There are major league catchers that can receive the baseball really well out there,
Yeah.
and for some reason they just didn't address that. Like that's an easy one. So
Just the Kirk details of the Kirk contract, $6 million signing bonus basically bumps his 2025 salary to
yep,
10.4, 10.6, which doesn't work against the luxury tax. So you average the bonus over the 6
right.
years of the contract, and so it doesn't hurt them that much. So it's a good move, 10.6 this year and just over 10 for the next 5 years if you average it
It's a
out.
good
It's
contract
a
if
good
you
contract.
think he can be a starting catcher.
Right.
Like, you know what I
So
mean?
so the argument for him being a 120 game starting catcher is for the first time he realized that he needs to get himself in tip top shape and he needs to be the guy. But to me, that's like Pete Hexes saying that if he gets to run the Pentagon, he's going to stop drinking. And then he does a press conference where he pulls a highball glass from under the podium and he takes a big swig during the press conference.
It's hard to change habits, is
It's
what you're
hard to
saying?
change your habits, you know. But
Giving Kirk more money doesn't mean it's just gonna
yeah, I mean,
incentivize his.
they're going to Tyler Heineman if he catches 73 games, he's going to have to bat ninth in those lineups.
He can't catch those. He
Yeah,
can't.
yeah.
Like,
So
dude,
that's the problem. It's a good contract for Kirk as long as he can catch that 115 to 120.
right, right, and that's remains to be seen. I hope he does. I like him, and he's one of those guys that, as a catcher, if he does play that many games, you got an edge because he can give you some offense where most catchers aren't really doing that. A lot of
Yeah.
them, a lot of them. There are
Well, he
some.
might he might be able to stay
The,
healthy if he quits trying to take second on balls off the wall because
right.
speed
The
is not
guy,
one of his
the
assets.
guy in the other dugout yesterday looked pretty good though. I mean, not
Oh
not so
God.
bad.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, no,
I mean,
that's a
woo.
guy.
Yeah,
And
there's
I
some
think
hitters over there, eh?
yeah,
Wow, that's a lineup and a half and no gunner yet.
right. Yeah. It's funny I said to John Schneider because his two sons are Gunner and Grayson. And I said, how come you got the only two active Gunners and Graysons in this ballpark today? Because Grayson Rodriguez is out and Gunnar Henderson's out. So he laughed.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
pretty good line actually. Yeah.
the
You'd
Vlad
probably trade
contract.
them for the other two.
Vlad, right. Vlad was not, he did not get the ovation during the intros that I thought he would. You pointed out that he struck out on a pitch that normally he would drive
That first
450.
at bat, man, he couldn't have swung out his that third strike was a meatball hanger. You know what I mean?
So he did draw two walks. He
Yeah.
made the mental error that we've described earlier in the podcast. Um, but just the tepid reception that he received during the intros really, I don't know if it bothered me, but it had me scratching my head and thinking, what the hell's going on here? So the contract status, his people keep saying that it's close. It was encouraging to hear Mark Shapiro say extension rather than free agent contract, meaning that
Right.
sounded like it was going to happen where it would still qualify as an extension moving forward, which would have to be before the end of the season. I think it should happen before they go on this road trip. I think it should happen at some point. If
Well, it
it's
should have
going to,
happened before opening
right,
day.
it
I mean,
should.
I just what can possibly change if you didn't get it done by look, we're all forgetting about Vladdy's deadline. I
Yeah.
mean, of
Well,
spring.
it was a tepid deadline.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't know that. Where's the incentive for anything to change at this stage? I mean, opening day is like, uh, It's either the Jays pay the ransom or they don't, I think. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I mean,
But
Vladdy's not going to get what he's asking from the
yeah,
Jays open market, and he knows that.
here's my theory on why it hasn't happened. Um, Details. I'm thinking like either deferred money, opt out year. When do you give him an opt out, and does he get an opt out? Signing bonus. Just the details. I think the dollar amount, if the dollar amount isn't agreeable already, it never will be. You know, if the Jays
100%.
haven't agreed to the dollar amount yet, it's not going to happen. But the details could be the holdup, and that might be why a guy who's so careful with his words, Mark Shapiro,
Hmm.
felt confident enough to say, "We're confident or we're hopeful that we'll be able to reach an extension with Vlad," and say it with feeling and conviction.
Yeah, I don't see it quite the same way. I think this is all a PR move. I think his words are very carefully chosen, and I think he's trying to put Vladdy's camp back in a position that Vladdy, when he's unfortunately has spoken out unnecessarily, I think, and that hasn't helped Vladdy. I think it's either they match Vladdy's demands or he's not there. I don't think there's a negotiation. I just think he has put a tax on this for Toronto to pay, and they pay it or they don't. And maybe some of those details you're referring to are part of the demand. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah,
like I'm sure Vladdy wants an opt out after 5 years, whatever it is. But
yeah.
I just think they either match Vladdy's contract demands or they don't, and
A-
I don't think he really
Yeah.
wants to stay otherwise.
Anecdotally, I will if the Blue Jays ask me when I was there in PR from 2019, which was Vlad's rookie season, until 2022. Now he said, and then he said he didn't want to go to the Yankees. He would never sign with the Yankees, blah, blah,
Right.
blah. And now he's saying, of course,
Of course.
yeah, I'd sign with the Yankees.
Of course.
I say from observation that he will never sign with the Yankees because we would go to Yankee Stadium and there'd be a line. I would have had 8 requests for interviews from
Yep.
Spanish language radio, and they all have these stupid little cell phone cameras,
Right.
and I
Right.
would go, okay, so do you want a scrum with Vladdy? I can bring him out. And they would go, no, we want individual. And they would
Yeah.
all ask him the same goddamn questions,
Yeah.
but they
Yeah.
wanted it individually. And Vlad would stay in the clubhouse. I would have not, those are the only guys I wouldn't let in. I was treating them like they were make Canada's not for sale hats.
We
but,
don't allow that in
but
here.
yeah, so they would wait in the dugout and Vlad would come out for like 10 minutes
Right.
during batting practice. He would never hit on the field in New York. And so my point is like, why would he sign there and become a full-time New York player where he has to put up with this every day? And so that's my observation. And I'm a great observateur of life in most cases.
Well, there are other options.
Yeah,
So,
there are
you know,
other options, right?
but yeah, obviously he's just making sure everybody's in on the bidding, so to speak. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
think you're probably right. I think
Well,
he has.
yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
think he'll end
clearly
up.
that's the major
Yeah.
reason why he brought the Yankees back into it. One of
Yeah.
his agents or advisors said,
Yeah.
"Hey,
You don't come out and say, "Yeah, I'm
yeah,
not playing. I won't sign with the Dodgers." You don't say it. It's
right,
not good for your marketing.
right." Um, so we've discussed Andres Jimenez, and I think he's got a chance because his contract is long term that he signed with the Guardians, and that the Jays
He's not
picked
going
up.
anywhere.
Yeah, he's not going anywhere. So he and Kirky are here, I think, till 2030, both of them.
Right.
Um, so the exercise this week that I asked you to do was to rate your top 5 all-time Blue Jays second baseman in order, um, just to see where he has a chance to insert himself by the end of his Blue Jays career. I think we both would have Robbie Alomar number 1. Am I
Yeah.
correct?
Indisputable. Correct. Robbie is, yeah, head
All
and
right.
shoulders
So
above
you
everybody.
you go number two, and then I'll tell you my two. I'll go number three. You tell me your three, and we'll go that way
Okay.
through the
So
top
so
five.
two and three were actually I found really difficult. Um, I think if you just go statistically, this guy makes it, but I put him at three. My number two is Damaso Garcia. And I think it's what he meant to baseball in Toronto when he was here, obviously in the early stages of the franchise. His ability to hit, and he was just, the top of the order guy, obviously you know, in the day and age of analytics with his lack of walks and stuff like that. But man, he was just a great hitter, a very passionate player. You know what I mean? For me, and maybe that's a little biased, but I have him as my number two. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I'm a big Damo Garcia guy. He meant a lot to the franchise. I think that's important.
Well, my number two is Damaso Garcia. When he came, he played a year in Montreal, so we
Oh,
inherited
that's right.
him.
That's right. That's right.
We
Yeah.
inherited him from Toronto, and all I heard from the Blue Jays media, who tend to
Burning
be very
jersey.
negative, yeah,
Burning
tend to be
jersey.
very negative. The media, I've been a part of it for so long, but
Yeah, well known,
they were
bunch of dicks for sure.
they were down on Damo.
They were down, and Damo was a little sour at the end for sure.
Garcia shows up in the Expos clubhouse, and all of a sudden, this is not the guy that I was described. This guy was a leader of the young, and there were a lot of young Latin players on the
Right?
Expos team. And
Yes.
after games during the season, he would round them up and he would take them somewhere. And as a group, they would have a drink together. He would pick up the tab, and he was always dressed to the nines. He was always dressed in a sharp sports shirt and a jacket, and looking after. He was like a shepherd of young Latin players.
Right.
And I just was so impressed with the way he carried himself and the way he performed on the field. He was at the tail end of his career,
Yeah.
but just I look back at his numbers, as you point out in Toronto, and he clearly qualifies as my number two guy.
Yeah,
Um,
I had it there too. So who do you got as three?
Number three, even though he was only there one year, I find it hard not to include Marcus Simeon on that list. He came over, he put together, he was leading, he and Vlad led an offense that was unrivaled, maybe in recent Blue Jays history. And if he had stayed, well, he was never going to stay, but that one year put him in the number three spot for me.
Wow. Okay. I don't have him on there because he played 1 year. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a great year. I just, fair enough. I just think you got to play more games. You know what I mean?
Yep.
For me, number three is Aaron Hill. Aaron Hill had, speaking of big years, he had big year, and then he played a few other years there. I was a hitter, man. You know what I mean? I'm average second baseman, at best, but man, he had that. What did he hit? 32 1 year or something like that.
Yeah. No,
Um,
his single year numbers, when you look at them, are surprising because people think of him just as a fill-in guy, fill-in second baseman over an era where they weren't that good. But his numbers in a couple of those years, especially the one you're talking about, were incredible.
yeah, he had a nice career actually. When he left,
Yeah.
Arizona and things. For me, he's number three. That was my three. My number four guy is got character, Orlando Hudson. Uh, I mean, he's a character, man. What do you say? And he was a darn good second baseman, a darn good player. So for me, he came in at number four. Was he gave you a lot offensively too. Like he was just better than I think people remember sometimes. Who'd you have it for?
My number four was also Orlando Hudson. I covered those teams, and he was like the most interesting guy in the clubhouse. He wanted to be a, South Carolina hip hop mogul. Um, his
South
personality
Carolina hip hop.
his personality was infectious, and his defensive skills were undervalued. Even though people thought he was just flashy and not that good, but he was good, and
Yeah.
so he made my number four.
I don't know what would JP Ricciardi say about him? Do they have that
JP's
little
not
misunderstanding? You know what I
He's
mean?
not into hip hop.
Yeah, he is not in the not the South Carolina variety.
Right. My number five guy was Aaron Hill, who you mentioned as your number three, but my number five was Aaron Hill for all the reasons that you said. I just had him down there because I sort of value defense quite a bit.
Yeah, and I did a slash on my number five, one for defense and one for offense. I shared my number five as Ryan Goins for defense and Devin Travis for offense.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
D-Trav, man, and speaking of good human beings. You know, if you'd be hard pressed to find a better human being than
Oh
Devin
God.
Travis. I mean, just a good human being. There's nothing else. The minute I was introduced to him, we had to do the press conference. You just even on the phone, you knew he was a very mature, special kind of
Yeah.
guy, and he could hit. What a shame with injuries. What a
Yeah.
shame.
I
Because that
remember I remember covering at spring training and Devin Travis was injured, was on the IL as he often was,
yeah,
which spoiled his career, his path
ruined it.
to
Ruined it.
stardom. But I was in the clubhouse and the rest of the team was out on the field and I was talking to Devin about his injury and I was wanted to do an encouraging piece about his rehab and the timing of his comeback. And I'm talking to him and around the corner of the clubhouse comes Marcus Stroman who says, "Don't talk to this guy. He's an asshole." He's not talking to me about Devin. He's talking to Devin about me.
Oh no, and Marcus is right too.
Really?
I mean, Marcus was correct too. But I
So,
mean, we all have
so,
different
so
approaches, Griff.
Stroh goes back around the corner to his locker, and Devin shakes his head and he goes, "Richard, don't worry."
Yeah,
I said, "Okay, there's a guy that's not influenced by peer pressure. I like that,
that's
But
right.
he was such a charming guy and such a good person. And
Oh,
like you said, the fact that he wasn't able to reach the levels that he should have and was capable of is too bad. It's sad.
right.
But just a note on Devin Travis, Alan Roden was the first Blue Jays player to make his debut in the major leagues on an opening day since Devin Travis in 2015.
Really?
Yeah. So that
That's
that
good for
shows
him.
you
And
where
he got a
the
base hit.
that shows you where the Blue Jays position player development has been. That's 9 years ago.
Wow. Wow. And good for him, by the way. Congrats to him. I was a little surprised to see him in the lineup, but good for him. Base hit.
Next question. Or we got a couple more and then we'll wrap it. But the question of Max Scherzer, and
Yeah.
we spoke about his thumb problem last week. Then to me, it's amazing that he was able to throw at the minor league complex and recover from that, and then throw. He went all the way to Fort Myers to throw in a major league game, and I do believe it's because I have no proof of this, but he lives across state, and so his family was probably able to come across and see him throw in Fort Myers and then drive home with him, so, across Alligator Alley or whatever it
Well,
is.
nobody makes that trip unless there's
Yeah,
personal gain in there somewhere. You do
unless
not
you're
make that trip.
Jose Bautista and you rent a charter plane for your buddies.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
But yeah, what do you
Myers,
think?
that's
What
for
do you
sure.
think the future of Scherzer and his thumb and the possibility of playing a full season or at least 22 to 32 starts? What do you think that is?
I'll put the over under at 20% a chance. I think at his age, with his injury history lately and this particular injury, which is, as we found out, going on for a couple years, I think it's probably unlikely. I think you're in a take what you can get mode, and what you can get is probably pretty good when you get it. So, be paying $15 million for it. I don't know if that's, but there, I understand the desire, the need, and a bit of desperation on their part to add that. But um, I think if you get 20 starts, that's a lot of starts, Griff.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
a lot of
I
starts,
mean,
and that's
32 these days is a normal amount. You look at Jose Berrios, 32 starts exactly every year since 2017, except for the pandemic shortened season.
right?
So that's the number. That's the target for any starter who's going to take the ball every fifth or sixth day. But yeah, as you said, 20 is a lot. All you need is like two stints on the IL, and you're struggling to reach that number.
And then what? Who's getting the starts?
Well,
I
that
mean,
was the
like,
next question. That was the next part
boy,
of the question. If to me, if Scherzer can take the ball until the middle of May, then there'll be a clearer picture of who could be the guy to step in as a fifth starter. Bowden Francis had a bad start to spring training, but then his last two outings were pretty good, were excellent. And Jake Bloss, it's not fair to all of a sudden, even if
no.
Scherzer goes down early in the season, to bring him up when that was not the plan. It was to allow him to develop at Buffalo.
He needs a good month at least of good performance before you feel like you're even you need to do him a favor and get
Yeah.
him ready, right? So
So plan A, or the optimum injury timing, if you want, because it's going to happen with
right.
Scherzer, would be late May, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, I think if you can at least things settle, right?
Yeah.
And you hope somebody, you know, pops out of somewhere and has performance. And obviously you hope Yariel is the guy. I mean, like I said, it was one outing yesterday, so we can
Yeah.
all, calm down
Yeah.
a little bit there. But and AAA isn't exactly chock full of, you know, um,
Well, you
whose
got,
is, I guess, whose
yeah.
is really, but that's where you want your prospects banging the door down, and this is where the criticism comes in about the farm system. They just haven't had the guys come and banging the door down, and anybody who is 27 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a
I mean,
position player.
you got Eric Lauer, who had some
Yeah,
success
he's the
in
guy.
Asia. Yeah, he's a left-hander, and they don't have any left-handers. And when
So
they lost
he's
Ryan
next up.
Yarbrough, yeah, when they lost Ryan Yarbrough, that left the 13-man pitching staff with only Brendan Little and um,
Dick,
Richard Lovelady as
lovely. Yeah.
left-handers. So yeah, that Lauer would be the guy because he's a veteran and he's ready. And Bloss eventually would be the guy, but I don't know whether he'd be ready by mid-May to come up. He clearly wasn't ready last August and September. They were hoping he would be because it would have made the victory parade for the
Yeah.
Yusei, or for the Kikuchi trade.
Yeah. You wanted to show him
Yeah,
off.
yeah. I mean, the same with Loperfido. They were hoping Loperfido could step up and win the job this spring as an outfielder, but he didn't.
You ran into a wall.
Yeah, that's right. Stumbled, twisted his neck. Lucky they're padded out there in spring training. The
Yeah, that
guy that,
wasn't always the case.
yeah, yeah. I remember Gary Carter playing the outfield in Winter Haven, and Larry Parrish's dad, who was playing third base for the Expos at the time. Larry Parrish's dad was the architect of the Winter Haven ballpark, and
Oh, really?
it had a cement wall in the outfield. And Carter didn't care. It was spring training.
Yeah.
He went and he made a catch, and he just crashed headfirst into the wall, split his head open,
No
and,
way.
and like everybody's looking around at Paris going, "Your dad sucks."
He forgot a couple things there. That's crazy. Hey, you forget just how much luxury is in the game these days and what the
Right.
play parks they played in. That's hilarious.
The guy that I'm surprised has not been given, because we see a lot of high draft picks get rushed through the system. And Trey Savage, to me, I know in the prospects game against the Twins prospects, he was facing guys who were as young or younger than him in pro
Yeah.
experience, and he shoved it up their ass. But he's starting at I believe Dunedin. So
Right.
his next level would be Vancouver, then New Hampshire, then Buffalo. I'm surprised that he's starting that low. Maybe they'll accelerate him through there if he succeeds at every level. But he's a guy that I thought might be ready by August or September, especially if they're falling out of a race. But maybe not. Maybe they're
That's
going to.
aggressive though. I
Yeah,
mean, that's aggressive.
yeah,
Only Anaheim usually does that.
yeah. Right. They did it again.
Yeah.
They put a
You know.
guy. They put a guy who hadn't played in a professional game on their opening day roster again this year. So.
Attaboy, Perry. Got a different version of progression, I guess.
Yeah.
But hey,
But the other guy is Alec Manoah, who, even if he's threw off a mound at spring training, that doesn't mean he's even close to being ready to jump back in.
no. When did he have surgery?
Uh, it,
Remember?
it was early last year.
Yeah.
It was, second month of the season. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
12 to 14 months would be
yeah,
August, September.
yeah. So I mean, he should be back in the major leagues this year. You would think. You know what I mean? And that could be a real boon because his ceiling is very high. Let's just hope he's got all the mental parts figured out because there's no question on the talent.
Okay, I did my power rankings, my preseason power rankings. I'm just going to read you my top 10 quickly. Tell me
Okay.
what surprises you or not, and then I'll read my bottom 10. And I know we disagree on bottom 10, but
Yeah.
the Blue Jays, by the way, I ranked 13th, which was
Sounds
fourth
about.
in the division. And there's 12 playoff spots, or yeah, there's 12 playoff spots, including the three division winners plus three wild cards. So they're just outside that playoff window. And they could win their
Yeah.
way in. They could play their way in. But
Yeah. I mean,
I got Dodgers, Rangers, Diamondbacks, Phillies, Braves, Twins, Orioles, who I've got as a top team in the AL East. Mariners, Padres, Yankees are my top 10. And Yankees obviously second in the division. Any of those surprise you? I
yeah,
know
I mean,
Texas does.
having Texas and Arizona that high, I mean, you could be right. I like how you're thinking. I think that's probably higher than most people would have them, which I like you for that. And the Mariners, I think, is a sneaky one in there. That's all based on their pitching staff,
Yeah.
clearly.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
the Mariners eighth overall. That and we've agreed in the
where'd you have
past
the
that
Dodgers?
they're the which?
The Dodgers?
Number one?
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna say. Okay.
Yeah. But the Mariners eighth, to me, they've been a reflection of the Blue Jays, like built on
Yeah,
starting pitching, try and put together a bullpen, suspect offense, but decent. They can score some runs, but the starting pitching is the key. And the thing to me that has them eighth and the Blue Jays 13th is that the Mariners starting pitching is a lot younger
yeah.
and they are deeper. They have a fifth, they have a sixth and seventh guys who could step in.
Well, it's the best in baseball, probably, right?
Yeah.
I'd have Atlanta higher. I think where you have them, a lot of people do. I think they're just better than that. I mean, it's to me, it's about Chris Sale too. I mean,
Yeah.
you have an aging starter. I mean, obviously won the Cy Young, but if he can maintain performance with, I think that rotation is good. Schwellenbach, those guys, just I think I'd have them higher, but I kind of like I think Arizona's a real neat pick there. That's a good team.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good team, man.
And then I mean, they added Corbin Burns. They've got Corbin Carroll. They got Marte. They got some really good players and a decent rotation. It's a deep rotation too.
Yeah, I like Baltimore there. I think that's probably your boat, right? I mean, their rotation's going to come bite them in the ass, I think,
Yeah.
at some point.
Unless
Zach
they play
Eflin
the
is
Jays every
I
day.
like, but he's not your top guy. What's that?
Unless they play the Jays every day.
Oof.
Then the rotation will be fine.
It's just fine. Bottom
Uh,
10?
I'll give you the middle 10 just to be
Yeah.
synchronistic. 11, Cincinnati, then Boston, Toronto, Cleveland, Astros, Mets, Cubs, Giants, Royals, and Tigers. I'm not a big fan of the AL Central. Clearly, if I got the Royals 19 or the Royals 19 and the Tigers 20.
And the top AL Central teams, right? Oh no, you had the
Yeah,
Twins.
Cleveland's 14 and
Oh, sorry.
the Twins are
Okay.
6. Yeah.
Oh, the Twins are six. Ooh, that's aggressive.
I love their bullpen. And
Yeah,
I love the top 5 in their batting order compared to the Jays top 3.
no question. No, hey, I think you're right, actually. The Twins underperformed last year. There's no doubt about it. Okay.
But the Reds 11 because of Francona and Ellie De La
Eagle.
Cruz. Boston ahead of Toronto by one. I mean, that could flip flop depending on how the season plays out.
I don't think many people would have the Reds that high. I too like them, right? And I like the top end of their rotation. Um, so I think the ceiling is high for the
Yeah.
Reds.
The
Yeah.
Guardians, other than the bullpen, I
Where'd you have Cleveland?
14 after
Yeah,
Toronto.
I don't like them at all.
Yeah, I just think that they got a great bullpen, deep bullpen, but getting to the eighth and ninth inning with a lead is going to be difficult for them.
Yeah, I'm going to make a prediction that they will easily fall into your bottom 10 by the end of the year, Cleveland.
Yeah.
I
I think
don't think they're that good.
I got the Astros 15. I got some feedback on that. That's like exact middle of the pack, the
Yeah.
Astros.
Yeah.
And every good thing comes to an end, and when you make the worst second baseman convert him into the worst left fielder in baseball, then I don't know. I don't see that as a
You
win.
don't like short people, do you?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think they're the best in that division. So I think you're ahead of your time by a year, Griff, in my opinion.
I always have been.
You always have been, no question.
Then Mets, Cubs, Giants. Those are all teams with reputations that are undeserved.
Yeah, I think the Mets are in a tough division, and they're going to be right where you say they are. I
Yeah.
don't think it's going to be tough for them to win that division.
Bottom 10, I got 21 to 30. I got Pirates at 21, the Rays, because they'll be playing outside melting in August and September at
Ooh.
Steinbrenner Field. Brewers, I think Brewers were a mirage last year. Sacramento Athletics, 24. They're trendy. And 24 is still giving them credit.
Yeah, it
Nationals,
is.
I got Nationals, Cardinals, Angels, Rockies, White Sox, and Marlins.
I think the Rockies are the worst team. I think Marlins are ahead of the White Sox and the Rockies, in my opinion. Um, yeah, I think the Pirates are going to have trouble staying there. Like I said, through their own fault for not helping themselves. Um, but I think the Marlins are better than you give them credit for. I mean, yeah, I don't think they're the worst team in baseball. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
So they're less bad than I'm giving them.
They're less bad than you say they are. Um, yeah, those are some stinky teams at the bottom, eh? White Sox are 1-0, so are the Marlins, buddy.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And the Cardinals, I got 26, and they're 1-0.
And yeah, I kind of feel you with that one. Like Cardinals, people like them. I mean, the Cardinals, again, we talked about vibes. I think people, they're supposed to be okay. I don't
Yeah.
think they're going to be okay. And, you got the Arenado thing, and I don't think they're going to be good either. I
Yeah,
mean,
I think Cardinals fans are as savvy as any fans in baseball, and they didn't sell out opening day. 10 days in advance, they had not sold out opening day, and they know that fan base knows what they're about to get
do
into.
they ever?
Yeah.
By the way, what's the attendance supposed to be like tonight in Toronto? I'm curious. That'll
Not
be a real
another.
interesting story, possibly.
Yeah, yeah. They may have scared off the Red Hat Brigade.
That's right. There's a contingent coming, big contingent from the Red Hat Brigade.
We'll wrap this up by the weekly update on the Ironbacks and where they stand and sponsorship availabilities. If you have a website that people who really want to give you money for this can
Yeah,
go.
yeah, ironbacks.ca again. At this time next week, I'll definitely have some player signings to announce. I mean, they're signed, but we're going to start releasing that ticketing information next week. I am fortunate enough to I think my beer is officially ready today for tasting.
Oh,
So
sweet.
I mean,
Yeah.
I might what time is it? Might head there this afternoon for an official
A little
tasting of
IPA
that Dead
test.
Red IPA.
Yeah,
Um,
nice.
so the important things we're
Yeah,
taking.
all the important things.
We're out in the community selling sponsorships. It's going very well. So far, the community is being
And
very supportive.
home openers June 7th.
June 7th. So hang around for next week for some player announcements. Yeah,
Perfect.
he's
All
excited.
right. I
By
appreciate.
the way, by the way,
Yeah.
that's just a great hat you're wearing today. I don't know if we did. I don't
Yeah,
know if we talked about that on air.
It's Jackie Robinson, 1946 Montreal Royals. It's the hat they wore, and it's the hat I prefer. And it's a great hat, and it's a great memory. And it's April 15th is the anniversary of him in the majors. But he played in Montreal that full year before,
Yeah.
where the experiment became, yeah, he can do it because Montreal has accepted him. And I'm very proud of that city for that. And I'm very proud of this hat, and I appreciate you noticing.
It is a beautiful hat, and I think we need something like that in baseball. That classic look. That's just a
Yeah.
cool hat. I don't know what it is.
All right. Well, that wraps up another version of Exit Philosophy. And Mal, thanks for co-hosting. And anyone who wants to get past versions of Exit Philosophy, past episodes can go on griffstothepitch.com or YouTube. If you go on YouTube, like and subscribe. And we will be back next week after the Blue Jays have bounced back from their
Yeah,
opening day debacle. And
yeah.
we'll have something more positive to talk about.
Yeah, maybe the 6-1 Blue Jays, maybe. We'll
Yeah,
see.
perhaps.
Yeah, perhaps. Let's see.
But definitely a Scherzer start and how he reacted to that, how his thumb reacted.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
hopefully it's a thumbs up.
There'll be a lot to talk about for
Yeah.
sure.
All right, Mel, thanks a lot.
Yeah,
And thanks everybody for listening. And we'll catch you next week.
thank you.